Welcome back. Now we'll go into module number 2, and we'll be talking about the areas of module number 2, which are three elements of understanding a new Muslim: milestones, success stories, and a refined perspective. So obviously we are familiar with the dawah scenes, right? The typical shahada scenes and the hugs and the smiles and sometimes gift boxes and so on and so forth. So let's do a quick poll, right? Put down true, false, false, or true, 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 depending on your answers to these questions. So please use the chat to put down some answers and think about this. New Muslims usually have a stronger iman than born Muslims because they chose to be Muslims. New Muslims need extra support, and new Muslims are more tested. So let's take the first one, and that's a very common misconception. And I'll tell you why it comes from. So even if you take a look at the seerah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were two key time frames, right? There was a Meccan time frame, and then there was a Madani time frame. So we know that there were no munafiq, there were no hypocrites in the Meccan time frame. Because if you were to take Shahada in the Meccan time frame, the level of commitment was way higher than if you were to take Shahada in the Medinan period. Obviously, I'm talking in general terms, not talking about individuals. Because, you know, there was a clear opposition to Islam, and, you know, you have to be really courageous, really sure. However, in the Medinan time frame, you know, Islam was obviously getting more and more strength. So it was easier to convert, right? Because Muslims were stronger. Now, the same thing is happening here, especially in the West. I'm not talking about the East, the situations may be different. In general, when people take Shahada, there's no major price or major sacrifice to take Shahada. So people are taking Shahada very easily. So it doesn't mean that that most of them necessarily and strongly believe in Allah, and they're like, I get this, I'm gonna start worshiping Allah. Allah is my top priority. If Allah says go this way, then I'm gonna go this way. That's not the case for majority of the people. And I'm being very careful saying majority, right? So sometimes people will be like, no, but I know Jackie, or I know Tom, and he's so great. Okay, I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about general situation here. So it depends. But what people think is that every new Muslim is, mashallah, really committed, and so on and so forth. And that also happens sometime, you know, people will be like, I want to marry a new Muslim. But just because they're a new Muslim, that means that they're going to be amazing with Islam. And then they have really high expectations from them. And boom, there's a clash. Right? So this is coming from our naivety, right? Let's not be naive. Let's be deep thinkers. Let's analyze. Let's take advice from people who understand what's going on. Sometimes, you know, we are too naive for these type of things. So may Allah help us to be critical and be analytical, inshallah. The second thing is new Muslims need extra support. Well, yes, they need extra support, especially from a learning and development side of things. However, it's not true that they're tested more. Everyone has their own tests. And there may be more challenges just because where they're coming from, and they may not be. So the key message here is let's not generalize, and let's understand the situation of the new Muslim. That's what we'll be discussing going forward. So when we ask people, what are the common challenges that people face as new Muslim? And these are some of the things that people usually bring up, you know, abandoned by family and friends, forced to leave home, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, again, be critical, ask key questions. And when people don't do that, they hurt themselves, and they get dissatisfied, they get disappointed, and so on and so forth, because they're not asking these key questions. So my question is, if a new Muslim is facing any of these challenges, okay, let's not be naive. That does not mean that these challenges are because of their acceptance of Islam. These challenges could be something else. So if you do not understand the cause properly, then the solution that you will be coming up with will not be effective. So let's take a look at it one by one. Abandonment by family and friends. In the West, it rarely happens because of Islam. It does, but rarely. Okay, so sometimes that's abandonment could be a result of something else. It could be a result of, you know, other issues in the family, or it could also be a result of other issues with the person. So the second example is I've seen few cases of that myself, forced to leave home or hide one's faith. So yes, hiding one faith, I've seen that happen, right? And that's fine until the person is strong enough. Now, forced to leave home. Sometimes it can be because of faith, and that's also very rarely, okay? Most people wouldn't have to go through that in the West. Now, what I've seen happen sometime is a new Muslim would say that, okay, I'm being kicked out of my home. And people would jump in. And this happened in a community, right, that I was part of. The brothers and sisters, may Allah reward them, they said, okay, let's find him a place. And I told them the same thing. Let's figure out the cause first. So they hooked him up with some brother and, in his basement or what have you. And 2 weeks down the road, guess what? Now they are figuring out, how do we get him outside of our home? So sometimes the parents may be kicking the person out is because they are lazy, they're not working. It's been 5 years, they haven't been working, they just sit at home, they may be into drugs and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not saying everyone, but we have to figure out why is the parent asking the person to leave home, right? So that we can address that situation. Because in that scenario, if that's true, then finding him another basement may not be the right situation. You may have to find him a rehab place, or find him a place or a community who can tolerate some of the behavior. Same thing with unemployment and termination, right? I don't know if anybody being unemployed or terminated because of faith. It is possible, but I don't know of anyone. Sometimes it could again be because of laziness. I know people who don't show up to work, they miss their shifts. So what will happen? Right? Same thing, debt, financial difficulty, victim of abuse, legal troubles, and so on and so forth. So these are most of the time challenges coming because of their past, things that they were involved in. And yes, we want to help them, but let's not be naive and think that this is happening because they have accepted Islam. So that's my key message, right? Make sure we understand the cause. Another common thing is people think, okay, a person is taking Shahada, now I can go and teach them the Salah and teach them how to make wudu. That is also not something you can generalize, as we will see later. Is what's the point of teaching them Salah if they're not even motivated to learn and pray? So what happens after Shahada is they are still the same person most of the time. They're still social media, old friends, old habits, work, and so on and so forth. So there's not usually a 180-degree shift or a 360-degree shift. It's just a step by step. So usually the journey is very slow. So if you're expecting a flip, then you will be very disappointed. And we have a story here, right? It's a beautiful story. Please consider, you have the slides. Consider watching this video. It's a story of a brother who converted, who became Muslim, and then he went to the masjid. And this is what we would typically do. We give them pamphlets, or we give them a gift box, and then that's it. The person goes away. He still has old friends, old habits and whatnot. And this is what happened with this brother. Alhamdulillah, later down in the road, a few years later, Allah brought him in our way. And obviously Allah has given him the tawfiq, the motivation, but we were assisting him, we were following up with him. And now, mashallah, tabarakallah, he has performed all the 5 pillars. He fasts on Mondays and Thursdays. He prays tahajjud. Great opportunity, alhamdulillah, that Allah made us part of this journey for him. Okay, so these are the 3 elements that you can utilize to learn the situation of a new Muslim. So first and foremost, as I said, is their motivation and priority level. Because sometimes it may be really bare minimum, and then you have to work on increasing that. Because if you jump on the Salah and the details, the technical details of it, sometimes it may not be the right time. We'll talk about it. So you have to make sure that you're also working on their motivation. As I said, taking Shahada, many people take Shahada with different amount of Iman and different amount of motivation, or different amount of prioritization. And I'll give you an analogy soon about what this looks like. The second thing is, as I said, social situation, understand, how independent they are, how much dependent on parents they are. Maybe they're already married to a supporting non-Muslim, or they're married or have a girlfriend who is a non-supporting non-Muslim. So that's different, right? What are their financial challenges? And also analyze, make sure you understand that sometimes it may be because of Islam, and sometimes it may be just because of bad choices that they have made in life. Be aware of this psychology. Some new Muslims may have, minor psychological issues, right? Some may need a professional intervention, and they may have severe psychological and mental issues that also happens. So being aware of that is how you can then direct them to professional health, or recommend them or suggest to them, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is not a misconception, right? So our role, the training is not about being a teacher. So many people think, oh, mashallah, it's a new Muslim, I'm going to go and teach them salah, afkar, Quran. No, that's not happening. This is the dawah job. So you have to coach them, you have to motivate them, you have to give dawah. It's not that they are signing up for Islamic school. So that's another very common misconception that people have. Another misconception that people have is that person understands Islam. Many times people take Shahada because they overall like it. They like the friends that they're surrounded with, but they don't understand what Islam is. So even you say, oh, I was born Christian, I became Muslim. Okay, what's the difference? They probably wouldn't know much. Okay, and I have recordings of that on my YouTube channel that you can see the first conversations. So don't think that they understand Islam. And we'll talk about how you can actually make sure that they understand Islam. Oh, and by the way, this is also something that goes into the part of the da'is, right? People who are working with non-Muslims to make sure that they properly communicate and convey the message of Islam. Sometimes we are also selling short on Islam and what it means, and we're just like quick to get the shahada. So as da'i working with non-Muslims, please make sure that you do your job properly. Okay, so the milestones could be different things, right? So the first stage is that we just want to strengthen their faith. Okay, and the way we do that is by encouraging them to ask Allah, to communicate to Allah in English, in whatever language that they're comfortable with, to talk to Allah more and more, properly sitting down or just walking or driving, have more conversation with Allah. Second thing is to surround yourself with content that will motivate you, whether it be YouTube content or whether it be in-person content in the masjid and halaqah. And okay, if everybody can go on mute, that would be very helpful. And inshallah, when you're speaking, then you can unmute yourself. And then the third thing is to discuss, make sure that they're understanding as well. It's not just like a one-way street. Discuss the content that they're watching or that you watch together and see what they take away from it. And as you do that, then they will have the desire to learn. And then you can teach them. And make sure your teachings is a balance of technical and spiritual content. When I say technical, I mean the fiqh of worship. How do you make wudu? What breaks your wudu, right? And the details of the salah. What do we say? How do we say it? The pronunciation and so on and so forth. But make sure that they're getting the spiritual content as well. Spiritual content would be things like names and attributes of Allah, knowing Allah, seerah, knowing about the details of the akhirah, the virtues, the fadail of different actions like salah, and as well as the punishments and warnings as well. So one obviously great example for that is the Riyadus Salihin. Okay, then they will start praying or they will come to Friday prayers. And not everything needs to be happening in linear order. Sometimes they may, for example, start coming to the halaqah and class even before they're praying. Some people they like to do things. They like to be active, right? So, I think someone mentioned earlier, so we're not saying that the new Muslim needs to achieve a certain level of Islam and practice before they can do anything for the community. They can still be active. They can volunteer for events. They can still do dawah, but just being careful, right? If someone is way beyond your league, and that's for everyone, that's for new Muslim, that's for, educated Muslim. Like I don't spend time with everyone because first of all, I look at it like, is it worth my time? If the person is too much going to be debatey, I would probably just give them some resources and move on because I have always people that I can work on, right? So once you're into this, you always have more people than the time that you have. So the key thing I'm trying to say here is that they can try to get them active. If they have time, try to get them active in some sort of a community thing where even if they're playing sports with Muslims or socializing with Muslims, that has value. We'll take a quick look at some success stories, inshallah. So this is the brother that I was talking to you guys about, the brother with the gift box story, right? MashaAllah, him performing Hajj. That's another brother. He's from US. I've never met him, but I was able to mentor him remotely. So that's something I want to also emphasize, that sometimes you can also mentor remotely and then you connect them with the local masjid, but you are their coach. Maybe they don't have a local coach or mentor available, so you can support them, you can help them. And then I connected him with some people in Jeddah when he was traveling, and they took him out for Umrah, right? So you can do a lot of things remotely as a coach, as a mentor as well. And then there's some like other examples, from chat and whatnot. And you can see a lot of these stories on this link. The reason I'm sharing this is to show you that there's a lot of success possibilities as well. So now our refined perspective on a new Muslim is not that, they have a lot of problems because of Islam. That's a false myth. It's not about that they have a higher iman than everyone else in the community. What we understand is that they have an interest. They want to fix themselves. They want to follow the true path, but they have different levels of motivation. It's very similar to what happens in January, if you know what I mean. Many people sign up for gym and classes, and they have this thing, okay, I want to reset my new year, and I'll eat healthy, and I will work out. But it doesn't mean that everyone will be sure. Okay, I'm going to mute people, inshallah. Okay. And it does not mean that that they will be showing up to gym every day. It does not mean that they will be continuing the next month. Another thing is, like, if you look at it from a sales funnel perspective, someone shows interest, then they learn more about you, then they become an advocate, then they're more supportive, and so on and so forth. And then finally, we also have an understanding that shaitan is still active. Shaitan is not giving up on them. So the refined perspective, they have different motivation levels. Usually it's low in the beginning in general again, okay? So don't take anything for, one example and apply it to anybody, but just find it for yourself. Then, what's the situation of motivation for the convert that you're working with? It may be low, then it can go up, can come down, right? So it's not stagnant either. So it could be like a roller coaster. It could be gradually, but straight up. So you have to figure that out. Progress is likely going to be slow. They're going to adopt one thing at a time and slowly develop. Some people may go fast. Okay, the challenges are habits and culture and desires and company and shaitan. They may not have the true picture of Islam, but the opportunity for success is very big. The responsibility is also very big, and their social issues may not be because of Islam. So be careful of that as well. Okay, so that's our module number 2. Now, I'd like to hear from you, your comments, your takeaway, as well as your questions. And next week, we will not meet. We'll meet the week after. And that's when we'll start module number 3, inshallah ta'ala.